Yeah, so I saw this silly story. George Clooney exits politics after feeling used as a scapegoat. He raised $30 million with Biden, then urged him to step aside. Now critics are blaming Clooney for Kamala's loss, leaving him disheartened. Listen, I'm always going to be a Clooney guy. I'm a Doug Ross ER guy. I'm a I'm a Dusk Till Dawn Clooney guy. Ocean's 11 Clooney guy. Out of Sight with Jennifer Lopez Clooney guy. He has a brilliant, beautiful wife. He lives in Italy. He sold that liquor company and is now like a billionaire. Oh no, I'm always be a Clooney guy. And this kind of reminds me of what happened back in July. Let's go back into the way back machine, kids. Back in July, so there's that debate between Biden and Trump, and Biden looked horrible. And George Clooney, which I know it probably was hard for him, wrote that letter saying like Biden should step down for the good of the country, because Biden just didn't seem right. And people say, "Oh, how dare you write that letter? Like, who are you?" He's a guy has been talking to Biden probably since the Obama era, and probably before that. And he's seen the decline of Joe Biden. And I really do feel like if Biden was reelected, let's say he won, that's almost would have been elder abuse to me, because that man was definitely declining. Because that's a hard job, man. That's a hard job. Every president that we've seen outside of Trump ages in that White House, and Joe was already old. So for the cognitive part of that, that's a 24-hour job. I'm sorry, but I don't think Biden would have lasted that long. And Joe had, the way Joe was running, he had his own agenda. But I think people really feel like that Joe would have won and then would have handed it off to Kamala. I was like, oh no, Joe had his own ideas for a second term. He might have stepped down in the midterms, maybe in 2024. No, this is 2024 now, 2026. But no, that dude was not. If he won, he was not stepping down and handing it over to Kamala. Absolutely not. So if we go back to July, so Clooney writes the letter, and then people say, "Oh no, you don't know what you're talking about, boo Clooney." And Joe was like, "I'm not stepping down." And then somebody got to him. I don't know, it was both Obama, Pelosi, but somebody from the DNC got to him, or something else. I think one day we'll find out why Joe actually stepped down. I'm sure he'll save that for a book. He steps down, and the proper chain would have been gone to the DNC, and they would have elected somebody. But then he said, "No, if you guys make me step down, I want Kamala." Kamala becomes the choice, and then all of a sudden she becomes Obama 2.0 for 2 months. Like, she was Obama for like July and August. She raised like $1 billion. It energized the party. All the people who were donating to buy him before came back. It was a whole thing. And people were not mad at Clooney at that. I can't remember one person. When Kamala Harris became a thing in July and August, I don't remember anybody being mad at George Clooney at that point. They weren't praising him, but they weren't criticizing him. And I remember when Biden would be in interviews and he said, "Well, for the good of the country, I decided to step down." And people gave him a standing no. A standing O. People were happy that Joe had stepped down and Kamala was in his place. The problem was Kamala wasn't the strongest candidate. And I think that's the problem that people don't want to face. She was a good candidate. She wasn't the strongest candidate. And if you look at the history of VPs, most VPs don't become presidents. It doesn't happen. Crack open a history book, look at it. I don't even think, let's say that Joe Biden, because the reason Joe didn't run in 2016, because I think he did want to run. I think his son Bo passed away, and that broke him, right? But I think even if Joe, let's say Bo was fine, and Joe would have ran in 2016, I don't think he would have been able to beat Trump. That whole MAGA thing, the hats, like, people got to remember, to that time period, man, it was red hats everywhere. It was MAGA, it was Make America Great Again signs everywhere. That was a thing. And I don't care who, the only person that might have been able to beat Trump in 2016 might have been a third term Obama. And that race would have been tight as well. But no, Joe Biden probably wouldn't have beat Trump in 2016. It was probably better that he didn't run to 2020. But I don't even think Joe Biden, coming off being a VP of Obama, would have beat Trump in 2016. That thing was almost unstoppable in 2016. So it's silly, because people think, well, she's the VP. Of course she should be president. It doesn't work out. Dick Cheney didn't become president. Al Gore, even though he should have won, didn't become president. Mondale didn't become president. Like, we could just go down the line. Ford became president because Nixon got impeached. Like, I think sometimes we don't understand our history. So when I'm looking at this, the problem still remains that Kamala wasn't the strongest candidate, And the Dems overall, which is not her fault, the Dems overall wasn't paying attention to their base. They didn't connect with the blue collar workers. Trump took like voters under 30. That shouldn't be happening. He took a little bit of the black vote. That shouldn't be happening. Latin voters are different. Like Latin voters, I think for the most part lean Republican anyway. So that's a little bit different. So, but they lost some of them as well. So the Democrats just haven't been, they got away from who their base is. Their base is blue collar people, poor people, minorities, black voters, union people. And they got away from that. It was too much about reproductive rights. Now, again, I understood it, but even I was thinking like, even if I said to myself, even if Kamala becomes president, the court is so right wing, they would have to all, half of them would have to leave for her to put in enough justices to flip this over. And it's like, it's not going to work. Like, I was like, again, I understood why they ran on reproductive rights, but it's like, there's other things. They needed to run more about the economy. And she should have said, you know what? I need to change this economy. We need to fix this inflation. And she should have gone maybe a little bit against Biden, go to him privately and say, hey, I'm going to have to say some things that you might not like, but I have to separate myself from you for me to win. But she didn't do that. She was a loyal VP and she didn't do that, which is fine. But she had to, when she was on The View and she said that Sunny Hostin, of all people, asked her would there be anything that you would change. She said, well, no. So basically, that's basically was going to be Biden 2.0. And that was the wrong answer for that. But again, I've always said in the beginning, Roland Martin, Joy Reid, everybody who was that tried to interview or who was supporting her didn't push her as a candidate. She needed to be pushed. Like people seem to forget, Obama needed to be pushed. Obama did not want to talk about race. He wanted to run as a raceless candidate. But there was so much stuff going on when he had the race speech. It was because he was pushed into it. He didn't want to do that. And that's the thing that I think people who are pro-Kamala didn't do. They didn't push her enough to make her a stronger candidate. I always said that. So media too. Media who just said, hey, Kamala, she has no flaws. It's like she has flaws. You just say, you got to make her better. You got to ask her tougher questions. The best interview she had to me was on 60 Minutes. That was the best interview because it pushed her as a candidate. But okay, that was a whole thing. So she loses. And now everybody's blaming Clooney. And now Clooney is like, well, screw y'all. It's like, screw y'all. And he's right. Like for years, Clooney took a lot of hits from the right. Because Clooney was just back, especially in the 2000s, he was out there. Like he was like campaigning hard for folks. He stood up for Democrats. He took a lot of hits from Republicans and conservatives, you know. But he took it, right? He actually did the right thing for asking Joe to step down. And now the Democrats and Democratic supporters who don't want to face the truth are now mad at him. No, be mad at Joe for not stepping down earlier. Be mad at the Democratic Party for not running away from their base and not doing enough to connect with voters that somehow Republicans were able to connect to, and also be mad at Kamala. Not totally mad at her, but me mad at her because I don't know, man. I just don't feel like she was the strongest candidate. She repeated some of the same stories over and over. A lot of it reminds me of her running in 2019. And I think short term, I think she's good. I think Kamala's always good running short term. But the longer term she runs, she's not good at it. She had to really face these things in California, running for a district attorney and things like that. They had elections, but you know, it's not a pressure cooker like running for president. Running for president is hard. And I think she might run again. And she should, right? She's gained some enough experience. But to put your finger and point at George Clooney and say, like, oh my God, he's the reason that she lost. Like, no, he's not the reason she lost. The DNC is the reason she lost. Biden is the reason she lost. She's the reason she lost. Not some letter that Clooney wrote in July of 2024 to the New York Times that people hated, then praised, and now hate it again.